I'm going to start off with a brief introduction. I'll just start with myself since I'm the one talking, and a lot of you probably don't know who I am. So my name is Melissa Chiovenda. I am a cultural anthropologist, and I did rather extensive research in Bamyan with civil society activists on collective trauma. And then later I did some research with Afghan refugees in Greece. Worked as a professor in a university in Abu Dhabi for 5 years, but I'm currently working as an equity research advisor for the Department of Transportation. So I have to give this brief disclaimer. These are my own views. They're not the views of the Department of Transportation of the United States, and that's out of the way. So I am super excited to welcome Sima Samar and Sally Armstrong and to discuss their recent book. I first am going to just go over their bios as quickly as possible, although they're, such impressive bios, it might take a few minutes. I know that many of you are probably very well familiar with Dr. Samar's biography, but she is a well-known human rights advocate who has dedicated her entire life to fighting for freedom, human rights, and the empowerment of women. I want to also point out she's a medical doctor, just for those of you who don't know. So that's also been a really important part of her career and kind of the activism work that she has done. She was a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize. I believe that the winner that year was Barack Obama. I think that perhaps that was the wrong choice. So knowing what happened afterwards, but anyways, maybe we would have been better off choosing Dr. Samar. And she was then appointed to the United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on internal displacement in December 2019. She has been the special envoy of the president of Afghanistan and the state minister for human rights and international affairs. I think, we really came to know about Dr. Samar's work during her leadership during Afghanistan's transitional government after 2001, when she was really fighting to advance gender equality and human rights in what was a very tumultuous period. She was the inaugural chairperson of the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, which was established in 2002. And, from that time was always really pressing for human rights issues to be addressed in Afghanistan, including ongoing civilian casualties, including economic and social rights, and of course, always the status of women and minorities as well. She's worked relentlessly to strengthen the rule of law. If you read her book, this is a theme throughout the book, to work against the impunity of kind of certain actors that were included in the government in Republican Afghanistan, and to demand accountability for both past human rights violations and at the time current human rights violations. Of course, now we still have these problems. Much of this was personal for her. She lost her first husband in the repressive atmosphere of the communist government in Afghanistan. And I believe there was never any official closure to that. So that was kind of a tragic early event that I think led to much of this focus on human rights. Prior to being at AIHRC, Dr. Samar was the vice president of the interim administration of Afghanistan, again, back in 2002, and again, really stressed that establishing women's rights from the get-go was going to be key. She also worked internationally. She served as the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Sudan. And I think it's also then finally really worth noting that she has an NGO that she founded, the Shuhada organization, which operates schools and healthcare facilities. And so you could see really the intersection there of human rights, of women's rights, but also this past of healthcare and the importance of having everybody having access to healthcare, and focusing on marginal refugee communities and other marginal communities. So, I mean, there's probably so many more things to say, but I will stop there. Now, Sally Armstrong is an incredible author and journalist who, of course, wrote this book together with Dr. Samar, and a human rights activist as well. She was a 2019 Massey lecturer. She's been a 4-time winner of the Amnesty International Canada Media Award, and she holds 10 honorary doctorate degrees and is an officer of the Order of Canada. She's been the first journalist to bring the story of the women of Afghanistan to the world, and is relentless when it comes to exposing the abuse of women, whether on American university campuses or in villages or in a war zone. I'll just, give a quote that we found about her. So Michelle Landsberg, who's the author of Riding the Revolution, describes Ms. Armstrong in this way: striding into Taliban-held Afghanistan with a chador over her 6-foot frame, playing high fives with the traumatized child rape survivor in the Congolese jungle, marching with the defiant grandmothers in Swaziland, she explores the darkest reaches of women's experience and brings back an astonishing news of hope, challenge, and change. And she's the author of Uprising and New Age's Dawning, For Every Mother's Daughter, and other works as well. So I will try to stop talking soon. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our agenda. We want to really get into the journey of how this story came about, of the crafting of this book, about how Sima and Sally worked together to write this book. So we would really like to focus on that. We're also quite interested in hearing a commentary on their ideas about the current situation of what is happening in Afghanistan. And then we're going to turn over a good portion of the time to Q&A from the audience. So if you haven't read the book, I highly suggest you do. I have my copy here, it's flipped, but it's really incredible. I'm not going to go into too many details about it. The overview that I would give, though, is that it's really interesting because it's both an autobiography of Sima Samar, but it also is somehow like an autobiography of Republican Afghanistan. So when I was reading it, I started out reading about Sima's childhood, kind of what led to her becoming the incredible person that she became, all of the difficulties that she faced. But then, at a certain point, we're introduced to, the post-2001, post-2002 Afghanistan. And so her story just kind of completely intersects with the story of what happened in Republican Afghanistan, and they're kind of inseparable from each other. So it's turned. So that was kind of really my takeaway from the book. I will stop there, and I am just, really excited to hear from Sima and from Sally on their thoughts about what it was like to write this book together. Yeah, I'll leave it to you guys to take it away.
Thank you so much. Sally, why don't you go first?
Me? You want me to start? Well,
yes.
I have a story to tell you. The most used question in all the reviews that Sima and I have done are, how did we get together on this? And I want to tell you a story. It was in 1996 when the Taliban first took over Afghanistan, and I heard these terrible people. I'd never even heard of the Taliban, but I heard these people had refused to let girls go to school, denied women the right to work, told them they had to stay at home. They couldn't leave their house unless they were in the company of a husband, brother, son. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But at the same time, I heard a woman was defying them. She was keeping her schools open for girls. She was bringing women to work in the hospital and treating women in the hospital. I'm a journalist. I cover conflict. I cover it from the point of view of what happens to women and girls. So I wanted to interview that woman. But you know what? I called all over the world and no one would give me her name. They kept saying, oh, can't tell you who she is. She could be killed. Finally, I spoke to Farida Shahid in Lahore, Pakistan, and she said, well, you come on over here and we'll talk about it. Can you imagine telling your boss you want a plane ticket to Lahore, Pakistan, but you're not sure you're going to get the story? Well, I left the next day. I talked to Farida. She basically gave me the ABCs of militant fundamentalism the whole darn day. But at the end of the day, she said, there's a flight leave. She wouldn't give me the name. She said she could be killed. She said, there's a flight leaving at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning for Kuwait. You should be on it. Someone will meet you in the arrivals lounge. So off I went to Kuwait, walked into the arrivals lounge, and there was this woman walking toward me, smiling, putting out her hand to shake hands. And she said, you must be Sally. I'm Sima Samar. I believe you've been looking for me. And that was the beginning of 25 years of following Sima Samar around. And I want to share with you, you just told us what the book meant to you, Melissa. I want to share with this audience, this book, I said to Sima, you need to tell your story. You need an honest telling of the chronicle of women, of justice, of culture, of human rights, what really happened in that country. And I knew Sima was in a position to tell precisely why the government collapsed. So for me, I saw this as a cautionary tale to anyone else who hasn't understood yet that by hijacking religion and culture for political opportunism, you're looking for trouble. It'll wreck your economy. It'll destroy the health of your people. And I said to Sima, you got to tell that story. So that's how we started. And spent 2 years talking to each other every day. It was amazing.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you so much to Ehsan Shayagani, who actually organized this. And Sally, of course, thank you so much that you made the book reality. We were talking about it for years, but I didn't have time to do it. Anyway, I think, as Sally said, that it was 2 years that we were working on it and talking about aim and intention is one, to show that the Afghan and Afghanistan has not been like this. I mean, when I was young, I never heard this kind of extreme extremists to actually put all the pressure on women. I'm not saying that Afghanistan was not a patriarchy system or not a country, a very developed country, but it was kind of a peaceful when I was young. And I went to, keep saying that I went to co-education school in Helmand 60 years ago. Can you imagine that today the girls cannot go to school beyond 6th grade? And I went with the uniform of the school, which was a skirt and socks. Currently, these girls, young girls in Helmand, if they are allowed to go to school, they are wearing such a difficult uniform to keep their scarf on and to observe what the Taliban is saying and to read the subjects, which is not really build their capacity or give them confidence, and the subjects are controlled by the regime. This was not the case 60 years ago in Afghanistan. Yes, the curriculum of the school was not very advanced, and it was not really based on a real pedagogy, but it was something that the giving the children the possibility to think and to be able to read and write, to be educated. I mean, I studied co-education school in Helmand, and I studied my medicine in Kabul University. And I keep telling the people that we had a lot of cinemas in Kabul. Now nobody talks about cinema. And I and my colleagues and classmates from the university, we were going to every cinemas in Kabul. At least it is, I did not count it properly, but at least it's more than 12 cinema in Kabul. We were not only going to the 2 cinema, which was very much belonged to the men. And most of the cinemas in Kabul, they were not allowing people with shalwar kameez. So it was usually the elite and city people who were going. That was also extreme, but yeah, people were normal. I think if we didn't have the coup d'etat and the invasion of the USSR in the country, we would have been one of the peaceful country in that region. But we are unfortunate because of our geopolitical position in that part of the world. We are always being used by different powers, including the Cold War. The people of Afghanistan were caught between the extreme left, which was the pro-Russian. And I remember that the president of that time, Taraki, announced that we don't need millions of people in this country. We only need 1 million communists, a real socialist and communist person, rather than having all these, on that time, maybe we were 15 or 16 million, all these hungry people. They were not saying all these hungry people, but they were saying that not the traditional Afghans. So then we were caught between the extreme rights, which is Taliban, and which is the result of the Cold War, and superficial short-term policy. And I'm saying this because after the invasion of the USSR in Afghanistan, the Islamization and the extreme fundamentalist Islam is growing up everywhere. We didn't have it before. I mean, at least when I was young, we didn't have this kind of a people. So the Afghans are not born to be violent as Taliban are, and they are not born to be under the burqa as the woman you see only in the media under the blue burqa, without face, without any confidence, sitting and wagging. That is not the real Afghanistan. And it was made because of the Cold War and our socio-political position in that part of the world. The other reason that I wanted to write the book, particularly for the young Afghans, men and women, but for young girls, that they saw Sima Samar as somebody, the highest level of position in the Afghan regime and Afghan government, and bold and somebody who at least has a louder voice within the country. That I was not put because I was daughter of someone or wife of someone. I did achieve those positions in those places by myself, by resisting and my resilience against my family, against my people around me, and also against the Mujahideen in the regime in Kabul. So that was to say that everything is possible. It is not impossible to reach to those places. Melissa, you mentioned that I was put by President Ghani as a state minister for human rights and special envoy. Actually, he gave me only the topic because he wanted to go for election, and he wanted me to be seen in his team. But he never supported and enabled me to establish that, because the people who were surrounding the president, they were not giving money in office. So that was, I don't like that part to be in my bio, but that is the truth. Yep.
Well, let me add a few more things about this book. You know, I think most of the world now looks on Afghanistan as though the 20 years the international community was there was a failure. And I think it's pretty important that we realize that in that 20-year period, life expectancy in Afghanistan went from 47 years to 63 years. That's not a failure, that's a miracle. And nation building began. The kids went back to school. Maternal mortality dropped, I think, by 50%. But Sima Samar was the leader, one of the leaders. There were others, but she was part of this nation building. And spectacular things went on, which I felt it was important for Sima to discuss in the book, because it's hard to turn a country around. You know, a lot of the international community said, well, we were there 14 years. What do you think? And we had to pull our troops out. In Korea, the international troops were there for 35 years. You and I know very well, it's hard to turn the Titanic around, but you stay long enough with the people who had already begun the nation building. And at the end of the day, you have a prospering nation. And Sima was so much a part of that, but I can tell you, as much as she was, she was a big shot in the government, but boy, Sima Samar is relentless when it comes to justice and human rights. She just won't quit. One time, the Taliban, I saw this when they were in power from 1996 to 2001, happened then. They said to her, you close your schools and you shut down those hospitals or we will shoot you. No, they didn't say that. They said, we will kill you. And she didn't skip a beat. She turned around and she said, go ahead, hang me in the public square and tell the people my crime. I was giving paper and pencil to the girls. I mean, she defied people left, right, and center as she gathered the citizens of this country that wanted to build a new place. I had such admiration, but in recording her stories and following her around all those years, I felt it was important for the world to know, because today it's happening elsewhere, and we can learn a lot by reading this book and finding out how the heck it did happen. She tells you in the book who betrayed who sold off. And we're in a bit of a spot in the whole world today. And I think Sima Samar has some tremendously important pieces of advice. I'll throw it back to you now, Sima.
Thank you. Well, I think it's a lot of stories in that book, and the one of the issues that I did not made up. I lived through those situations. I lived through those regimes, and when I was talking with Sally, I said 12 leaders or king or holy
Bosses.
Amir al-Mu'minin false self-promoted leaders I saw in my time in Afghanistan. And as a girl, as a minority, and I saw also the oppression and the pressure. Although when I was fighting with President Karzai, he was, at least he was listening, although not implementing whatever I was advising him, but at least he was listening. And I have to admit that it was not an easy time when Karzai went and I went to Afghanistan. And not only him, the international community was not listening. Sally was present, and it is documented in that Daughters of Afghanistan film, that I was telling to the senators, US senators, that please don't go to Iraq, build Afghanistan first. Finish the job in Afghanistan and build a democratic country where people can enjoy and exercise their basic human rights. So they didn't listen. So going to Iraq was a big mistake. And currently both countries are suffering. Both people are under a lot of pressure by the different extremist groups in those countries. And it's not only, the whole problem is not stayed in Afghanistan, as I said, it is spread around the world. And we end up with the monsters. In 20 years of, as Sally said, the intervention by the international community and NATO forces, we were telling them, I remember when I was in Canada, when it was announced that I'm in the cabinet member, I came to Ottawa and met your prime minister and the member of the parliament. And then I came to the US. What I told to, I had a meeting with Colin Powell and Paula Dobriansky, the Undersecretary of State. And I told to Powell, I said, please do not repeat your mistake to isolate Afghanistan once again. Afghanistan was isolated when the USSR was collapsed in 1992. They reached to achieve their goals, so that it was not important for them. And the second point, I said, spend as much money that you spend on bombing on reconstruction of Afghanistan. Thirdly, I said, include women in everything and send some female diplomats to Afghanistan and some female soldiers. he promised that we will never isolate or forget Afghanistan, and we will never leave Afghanistan again. And Paula Dobryansky is alive, and she admit that. And he turned his face, he said, do you know how much money we spend on bomb? I said, I don't, but it is a lot. And also on the female, he said he will try actually to, we don't have a lot of female diplomats, but he will try to send some diplomat. And I said, I am from the minority. The collapse and the failure of this government is the collapse and failure of CIA. I said the word CIA. And he laughed. He said, I'm the first Black state secretary in this country. I understand what you say. And again, we are in the same situation. And Afghanistan turned to be the same, unfortunately, the same things. And they were trying to convince us that the Taliban changed, and now they are trying to normalize the whole program at the Taliban. They keep saying Taliban brought security. And I was saying that you forgot that they were the reason for insecurity in the last 20 years. They were kidnapping, they were bombing hospital, they were bombing school, they were burning schools, they were bombing the wedding party or hospitals. Maternity hospital, can you imagine that somebody will attack a hospital? As a woman, if you are in labor, nobody can see that part of the horror, unless those, even I was in Afghanistan, and I don't feel it as much as the mother who was killed with their babies on their either on the abdomen or before borning, or just born, maybe 2 hours before. So now they are in power, and of course they are not really doing all those attacks and suicide bombing and car bombs against their own government. The second point that I keep saying that, yes, the Taliban reduced the cultivation of opium. Yes, they reduced the cultivation of opium. Again, everybody forgot that they were the one who were encouraging everybody to grow opium because they were taxing people. They were trying to show that the government is weak and is not able to control. And now they want to actually to please the international community that came down. But the price of opium was low. And they had enough in the stock. And now what they are doing, the increase on the production of amphetamine and trafficking of amphetamine. And nobody wants to see that. That is the UN report. The third point that I keep saying that, oh, that Taliban reduced the corruption. Yes, it's less money goes to Afghanistan. But go and ask the people. The price of passport in Afghanistan is $100 officially. People are buying it in $2,500. Is that not corruption? They use every possible means to extort from the people. For the Hazaras in the Hazara area, they are pushing them to pay tax for each of their trees. And the other point, the fourth point that the international community, including US, unfortunately, in UK sometime, is trying to say that the Taliban are the reality of Afghanistan. Yes, they are reality of Afghanistan. But they are not accepted by the people. If they are accepted and loved by the people, why they are afraid from election? During 2005, when we had the, although not very, very good, but so-called election for parliament, some of the Taliban member, very high official, Maulvi Mutawakkil, who was the foreign minister of the first Taliban regime, he stand in Kandahar. He did not get enough vote from the people. Not enough, let alone not enough, but very low number of people voted for him. Their Minister of Vice and Virtue, Maulawi Kalamuddin, stand in Lugar, and he did not gain the support of the people. And I keep saying that, yes, Taliban is the reality, and people like me is also the reality of Afghanistan. And I was arguing with President Karzai, and he said, you are fighting for every single thing, and you want to include women. Why are you doing? And why are you always talking about the discrimination against the Hazaras and the women? We always respect our women. And I said, you are the son of a feudal from Kandahar. You don't feel it. I feel it as a woman, and I feel it as a Hazara. And then he said, you always fight. And I said, because Afghanistan has one Sima Samar. Sorry to be so selfish, but yes, we have a lot of Sima Samars now. So a lot of young girls who are named Sima Samar. So we have some more, yes.
Sima, if it's okay if I break in, because
Yes.
just in the interest of time, we've started to have a few questions, and I feel like what you've been talking about leads very well into a question that has come up from Sherry Knoxon, who it seems is working with young women and girls. I'm assuming virtually is working with she can correct me if I misunderstood, right? But virtually with young women and girls, and wondering for suggestions, virtually, right? So what can we do to, number one, give them any level of hope? And I mean, I also feel this profoundly. We know there's mental health crisis. We know, I mean, I think many of us are in touch with people, women, girls in Afghanistan who, feel just completely hopeless with the current situation. So how can we give them any level of hope, and how can we get the world to care about what's been happening there, which just seems to be getting worse and worse, and yet just is not getting attention, right? There are so many things happening in the world, horrific things that are happening in the world. And those horrific things that are affecting Afghan women, girls, are just being kind of pushed to the side. So do you have any thoughts at all about, I guess, really strategies that those of us who are trying to work on such things, what we might do?
One, I think we all have to advocate and continue to fight for keeping Afghanistan on the agenda. The second point, that we have to remind everyone that the terrorist groups or terrorism in Afghanistan will not stay in our boundary wall. It will reach the other countries, which is already unfortunately seen in 9/11. And afterward, a lot of other attacks, and the recent attack in Moscow also, and Iran as well. Iran, Turkey, they are the Tajikistanis who has been in Afghanistan. The second point, I think, is that we should help as much as we can in order to continue give education to the girls and give them hope. That can be online teaching, that can be homeschooling, that can be even give the possibility for the mothers who are educated to teach their own daughters and give them hope. And that is something that we need to mention. Third, I think we have to fight with the people who says that. I was in a lunch here with someone who worked in Afghanistan. Who was the deputy of SRSG in Afghanistan in 2009. He said to me, I was sitting beside him. He said that yes, the situation of women and girls are very difficult and bad, but there are other issues that should be tackled in Afghanistan. And I looked at him. I mean, the situation of half of the population doesn't matter. We should look at the other activity of the Taliban. This is part of the where you can see sustainable peace without their half of the population. Because the discrimination of mothers within the family is the cause of the conflict, because you start the conflict in the house. You put the father as a superior, as a leader, as a controller, and the mother is in a lower, inferior position. That is conflict. That you teach your children in the house that the son is superior than the daughter, and the boys are better than their sisters. And then they continue. They take that in the street, they take that in the classroom, and at the end, we end up with the Taliban-style mentality that they are special, holy, untouchable people. Who gives them the holiness? There's not such a thing in Islam to give them the right to kill and the right to put in prison half of the population. How can they be better than their mothers? It's against the dignity, human dignity.
Oh, I don't know if there's any other questions. If there are, please do, type them into the box or raise a hand. I mean, I guess I'll just, in the meantime, go ahead and ask a question, because I feel like this just then leads into something that I feel like I struggle with quite a lot. So what do we do? Do we say zero engagement whatsoever with this group until they change, or is zero engagement part of the reason they're refusing to engage? Is zero engagement just making the humanitarian situation worse? So I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are when it comes to like any sort of engagement with the Taliban at all, whether it's appropriate, completely inappropriate, and where you fall on that. Because again, that's something that I feel like I'm continuously struggling with in my own reading of the situation.
Yeah, I think it should be engagement, but conditional engagement. We should not forget that the $40 million goes every week in cash to Afghanistan. You like it or not, or we like it or not, the Taliban are benefiting from that, because it doesn't. There was a report, I don't know, I hope it's not true, that they took the relief or the money which was given to people in war back from the people. And they control, of course. And the second point, I think, it should be a clear and honest monitoring of the relief program in Afghanistan. And most of the relief is going to their people. And it was reports on that. And why we cannot do that? Thirdly, I think it should be united voice and approach. Now, Pakistan is complaining. I believe China, when they want to have, first of all, to have space there and get the mining contracts, but they want also to have information about their own Uyghurs. That is something. Russia, after the attack in Moscow, they announced that they removed the Taliban from the terrorist list. And these are, again, goes back to that overall competition between the superpowers. And I would say that bombs are not going to bring democracy. It's not going to bring freedom. War is going to create more hatred and more bloodshed. And the law might bring peace. And that is, law cannot be implemented without accountability and justice.
You know, the other thing we need to talk about, and Sima goes into great detail about this in the book, is the neighbors of Afghanistan have to be held accountable for the part they played in this country being unable to solve its own problems. If Pakistan is not called to account, if Iran is not called to account, what is this Afghanistan going to do? And as an international community, we can very well call those other countries to account. And another thing I would like to throw in here, and Sima again, as a way in the book of talking to all the different sides and bringing out, you know, the Haqqani people in leaders in Kabul, their daughters are all in school in Pakistan. Their daughters are in university all over the world. So one of the things that I believe, and Sima and I have discussed a lot, is the dissension in the ranks of the Taliban. Now, maybe, it's kind of a fantasy for me, but invariably bad people end up mad at each other. And it seems to me that presently we're seeing some dissension in the ranks. And if we as an international community, I'm speaking really on behalf of Sima here, can find ways to support what the world needs to do in Afghanistan at the same time as calling the neighboring countries to account. Those who are looking to profit themselves out of Afghanistan, and then see where are the divisions, where are the fissures in this Taliban crowd, and is there a way of supporting one over the other to try to bust the whole thing up? Just saying.
Yeah.
We have a few more questions, and I feel like they kind of run into each other. So the first one is from Ghulam Kharami, who asks, do you have contact with world leaders? And if so, what are their perspectives regarding the future of Afghanistan? And do you believe that the Taliban will gain acceptance from the international community? So I feel like that's one question, and then I'll move on to the second one after we get through that one.
Yeah, I don't have contact with a lot of leaders, but I do participate on some of the programs and talk to different people. At least here I am in contact with the special representative of the US. And I think the other point is that the people who are outside of Afghanistan, the young generation particularly, I keep saying that they should use the opportunity and get education and build their own capacity, and do not forget about your root back in Afghanistan. You can help your own family and relative over there to get education. It is possible to continue if they have, at least if they have food to eat. And that is really important. And still, there are NGOs and different people who works on education. We did it, I think, if Wasif Ehsan is the same Wasif Ehsan I know, he knows that I was doing educating people during the first round of Taliban. Are you the same Wasif Ehsan I know? And he's
Salam, Dr. Sib. Yes, I'm the same.
yeah, okay. So they were educated during the first Taliban regime. We brought them from Afghanistan to Pakistan to get some extra education. So there is possibility. We still can bring some girls out of Afghanistan and teach them in Pakistan. But I think it's a basic human rights, and we need to keep the values and the principle of human rights seriously, not to be selective on human rights, that this one is important for which kind of people, and that is not applicable in Afghanistan. One thing that I keep fighting for when the people are saying the values and principle of human rights is Western value, it's not Western value, it's a human value. So wherever there's a human, there's a value with it. And we should learn from our mistakes in the past.
That's great. I feel like, so that definitely got at the question as to what the diaspora can do to help their family members within Afghanistan. So, if you have any further questions regarding that, just let me know. But I'm going to kind of jump down a little bit, and when there's another question asking, when you talk about accountability, like, what does that look like on a practical and actionable level? How can we really hold like people accountable practically? I guess if that's what the question is.
One, I think the issue of violation of women's rights in Afghanistan, that we call it gender apartheid. I think we all have to lobby for that to be criminalized and to be part of the Convention on Crimes Against Humanity. And we have to lobby with our government. I mean, the people who are in Canada can lobby with their politician and push them to act, although the Canadian ambassador is quite on our side in UN in New York. The second point that what I'm thinking about accountability is that, of course, there is not a judiciary system in Afghanistan who could do the accountability, but we have international mechanisms that could keep them accountable. And that is, one is ICC. We all keep talking, but we are selective. When Putin is convicted, everybody was clapping that, yes, ICC, but nobody is talking about Haibatullah. And even in the other conflict that we see around, ICC as an international mechanism of justice and accountability should be empowered. Because in conflict countries, look at Sudan. Look at the other part of Middle East. Everybody is killing everyone they want without respecting the international human rights and humanitarian law. So unless we respect the law and promote the law, we will not have sustainable peace in this planet. Because bombs, missiles, and Kalashnikov is not bringing peace. I was in another webinar today with the university woman. Canadian military officer said that they told me that he said there's a need for another blood in Afghanistan. I said we had enough blood. Everybody tried their new weapons and bombs in Afghanistan. We need different approach to Afghanistan. And one is of course, the sanction against the Taliban. And wherever they go, they should be kept accountable. And ICC should be empowered, I believe.
Sima, describe that, what you mean when you want the International Criminal Court to be included. Am I muted?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Well, you said
Yeah.
you should, the International Criminal Court should be involved. Tell the audience what you mean by that.
Yeah, International Criminal Court is a mechanism that all of us, the UN and everybody was agreed to establish a mechanism, international mechanism to deal with the international crimes, such as war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide. And now the aggression is also is part of that. And that is located in Hague. And I think they are, Afghanistan has joined the ICC. So they can start investigation in Afghanistan and arrest the Taliban member and leadership if they want. So they are very cautious, although we keep pushing for gender apartheid, but the prosecutor who's currently Pakistani, Pakistani, I mean, he lives in British, but he's from minority from Ahmadi, who are very much prosecuted in Pakistan. And he keeps saying that he started the gender prosecution investigation in Afghanistan. I think it's very clear he doesn't need a lot of investigation, because the Taliban's decrease in statement is good enough proof to keep them accountable.
I really appreciate the reflections on the ICC. I think this is very important, and I also appreciate that you keep, referring to Sudan as well, because I think that this is, another horrific conflict that is just not getting the attention that it should right now, and it's it blows the mind that it's not.
Well, you have to
there's a-
remember, though, you have to remember that the ICC does have rules, and
Yeah.
maybe their method of work has to be altered in order to react more quickly. We talk about how justice has to move slowly in order to be accurate, and that's true. But in the meantime, we have probably a dozen crises going on in the world right now. Perhaps the ICC has to adopt rules that allow them to work faster, but just blaming them for not acting isn't enough. We have to say, what do we need to do to allow them to act faster?
I don't believe the ICC itself is to blame for
No, they need
what's
funding,
happening right now. I think there is a very
political support and financial support. They don't get
Yeah.
enough money.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't place the blame with the ICC itself. I think you're absolutely right. There needs to be a lot, maybe internally that needs to change, but also externally, the way that the ICC is treated by outside powers needs to change. I mean, it would be a whole other topic, I think, for a different discussion. But I definitely appreciate bringing that into the conversation. We have little time, and so I'm going to try to let's see if I can get through the questions that are here. There's Zulika Akrami, who's asking, what do you see for the future of Afghanistan? So do you think that the Taliban are going to remain in power, or do you see this as a sort of power vacuum, and that the United States, if I understand correctly, that the United States is going to be concerned that Russia and China will take advantage of what is now a power vacuum semi-filled by the Taliban, and perhaps return to the area? And then finally, what do you see are the reasons that the US-Afghan alliance fell apart as it did?
I don't know all those, because I'm not in a position to understand the American policy, but I think it's a conspiracy theory that one of the reasons that they get out of Afghanistan, because they knew that it will be another war in Ukraine, so they could support and reduce the cost in Afghanistan. I hope. Knowing the policies, unfortunately, there is a doubt on that. Most probably that's the case. The other point that I would like to mention, I think it's the Afghan people is the main force of change in Afghanistan, and they should be the one, because we had the intervention of USSR with so many sophisticated weapon and policy and ideas, and we had the NATO forces in Afghanistan. But it should be Afghan people, and I hope that the Afghan people and Afghan men particularly take the issues of women's rights and violation of women's rights in Afghanistan seriously. My call on the men in Afghanistan is always, and I had it in my public interview also, I said, where are the men? I'm so disappointed, because they have mothers, they have wives, they have sisters, they have daughters. Where are they? Because it's not the problem of women in Afghanistan. It's a problem of every household. It is, they destroy the country. They destroy all the ethnic group. But some of the ethnic group are more under pressure, but they also destroy the other ethnic groups. their own ethnic groups of not letting them to get education and proper education. So it should be the people, and they should start with civil disobedience.
So I'm going to try to go through a few of the points that have come up. One, there have been several pleas and kind of requests for the audience members who are clearly concerned about Afghan girls' education and access to internet and so on and so forth, to support groups. I believe they have a GoFundMe that they have listed. So, you know, if anyone feels compelled, please, I mean, I know that this is a very important topic. My own friends in Afghanistan are trying to educate their daughters. Again, I'm sure everyone here knows people in that situation. So I really thank those of you who are doing that work and, you know, working to educate Afghan girls from afar. If anyone can give anything to try to assist them, I think that would be great. Another question I think that came up was just, okay, so how can those of us who are concerned with these sorts of things advocate to the ICC to kind of have Afghanistan brought forward? Who do we need to go to? What sorts of things can we do, if I believe the question, if I understand the question correctly, to try to get Afghanistan under the notice of the ICC?
Well, I think they can use every possible means. They can educate. First of all, they have to study themselves what is ICC and what is the role of ICC, and give awareness to their friends, families, and use that possibility. Secondly, I think they can go to their local government, and they can go to their representative in the parliament to raise that issue. I'm not sure if Canada is member of ICC, but Canada can fund ICC.
Yes, absolutely, Canada, member of
Yeah.
ICC.
So that is something that we need to fight for, that, because, as I said, that there's no other mechanisms to bring accountability and stop the culture of impunity everywhere for war crimes and crimes against humanity. It's unfortunately not Afghanistan. It's a lot of other countries who does the same things. I couldn't believe that people are not talking about Sudan, what is going on in Sudan, and how is the sexual gender-based violence over there. And there are a lot of other hidden agenda. The final thing that I would like to say is that ignoring Afghanistan is a mistake that they did in 1990s. And it is not going to help any other conflict if we ignore Afghanistan and not talk about it. We need to stop the blame game, that who is to be blamed. I think we are all has to accept and acknowledge the mistakes that we did. And then to work on that, because now we are blaming. Everybody's saying Afghanistan was corrupt. So yes, Afghanistan was corrupt, but the other people were part of the corruption. And I keep saying, how many of those Afghan and non-Afghans who got a lot of money from Afghanistan and Iraq are kept accountable in this country or in Europe? So it is that the corruption was a deal like any other political deal. So we have to raise our voice. And as I said, that it's really important to end the culture of impunity for international crimes, for apartheid.
You know what else you can do? You know what else you can do to help Afghanistan is read the book, find out, get the facts, and then talk about it, raise it, bring it up at dinner parties. We all had a vested interest in Afghanistan. And presently we're seeing these same issues breaking out all over the world. It's our voices that are going to make change, because if we keep the conversation going, And as I said, read the book, get the facts. It's also very entertaining, I might add. But get the facts, and then at the dinner party or the gathering or the meeting, bring it up. Say, by the way, did you know this? And what are we as citizens of the world going to do about it? I think the more we as citizens of the world talk about these issues, the better chance we have of pushing the politicians to make the decisions that are going to help the people.
Thank you, Sally. That was a nice conclusion.
Well, we could put Sima on a speaking tour because she always entertains everyone with her stories, and she lets you know this is about all of us. It's not just about Sima or the Afghans who are still there suffering under the child. It's all of us.
Thank you.
So I think we have little time here. I just want to check in with Ehsan and with Florence to see if there's any questions or requests to ask questions, whether I have missed, as I've been trying to monitor the chat box. So is there anything that you all think that has been overlooked that maybe we need to address?
Thank you. I think, we're kind of running out of time, so we want to be respectful of the time of the panelists and also our guests. But we can have probably one more question. Florence, can you just please highlight one of those questions? Or there is someone in the chat room asking if she can ask the question herself. I think it's gonna be nice if we give the floor to her. Appreciate that.
Yeah, is she still in here, Hassan Fatima?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. From another side, Vancouver, Canada. Here, this is me, Hassan Fatma. It's a great pleasure to meet you all online. I will just be quick since the time is running as well. First of all, I would like to start with a quote that, as Sima Samar mentioned, I'm a woman. I speak for women, and I'm from Hazara ethnicity. That's very ironic to me, and it's really, I really love the quotation. I have one question from Sally, that what are one of the challenges that she faced, one of the biggest challenge in writing this book, and how, when you were writing, how was the emotions beside it and how you felt about it. And my second question goes to Dr. Sima Samar, during saying that she's coming from I read the book. Fortunately, I was very passionate to receive the book and read it, and it's a very interesting book, as you mentioned. In the second last chapter, she was talking about when the Taliban came and took over, and she had to save her family to evacuate and everything. I wanted to ask, like, how Dr. Sima Samar was feeling before she left Afghanistan, if she wanted to leave Afghanistan, or what made the final decision that she decided to come out of Afghanistan, and how does she feel, if she has any message for the common people of Afghanistan. In her first chapters, I'm coming from Afghanistan, originally from Afghanistan. She talked about Sayyid Shahada High School, that it got bombarded, attacked, and coming from that school, I'm very glad, and I have my heartfelt gratitude to Doctor for mentioning this very important topic, so that the voices are being heard. So this part, I would like to know that what is her message for the common people, or for the families whose children have been murdered and they have faced such kind of situation in Afghanistan, and currently they're stuck in Afghanistan, if she has any message behind it. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Okay, so should I reply first to your first question? Because you've asked about 15 questions in your period. I hope you're part of Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan, living out in Vancouver. There's so many great leaders there. Now, I am going to answer very briefly because you took up all the time. So I want Sima to do the talking. So how did I feel about doing the book? Sima and I cried, we raged, we laughed, we remembered, we understood that we had a job to do, that we had to reach out to all, not just the women and girls, but all the men and the boys too around the world to help them to understand where all of us stand when a country collapses. So yes, it was a very emotional time, especially for Sima, and emotional for me as someone wanting to support her. And I'll leave it at that because time has been eating up and I want Sima to answer your other 75 questions.
Thank you. Good to see you, Haseen. As always, you are so vocal. I think I did not leave Afghanistan to stay. I came here after the long COVID restriction on traveling to see my family and my brothers and my son and my daughter. Unfortunately, I was here when the collapse was happened. So I was supposed to go back on 10th of August. On 8th of August, when the situation got worse, everybody was calling to postpone my ticket. I postponed my ticket for 2 weeks to 25th of August. I was not expecting the government to collapse so quickly. It was beyond my imagination. The second point is that I still struggle to find myself where I am. It's always, I told already this to Sally. I was talking to Karzai because here the Fletcher School had a project and they wanted me to convince him to do an interview online. So I called him. He said, "Oh, my sister, how are you? How is everything at home?" And I said, "My home is in Kabul." So we both cried and got emotional. I'm still there. And the third question that you made, I think the people, we cannot withdraw everyone from Afghanistan. We cannot take out everyone. And that is not a good solution. I personally still think that I should have been there. Okay, if they kill, they kill. What? The people, educated people are needed in Afghanistan. And we should not really try to bring all those educated ones out of Afghanistan because the lack of human resource was felt very much at the beginning of the Republic. And we will face again the same problem. And that is not a solution. We all have a responsibility to, I understand that the people are in problem, but we have to help people over there. So I think the level of the threat that I was facing is not faced by every individual. According to the Taliban, I'm one of the worst women of the history of Afghanistan.
Well, that's a compliment.
Yes, but no, they hate me. Anyway, so I think that's not solution. So try to help people in Afghanistan because we cannot bring all 30 million somewhere safe. The Taliban are not more than maybe 200,000. But thank you
That's
so
also
much.
true. Thank you so much, Doctor, for answering my question.
Yes, so I just want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Dr. Samar. Thank you, Sally, for taking part. It was wonderful to get to hear about the book and the writing of the book directly, and also your views about everything else. So this has truly been an honor for me. I don't know if the organizers would like to say anything in final closing. No. Good.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Samar, Ms. Sally, and our distinguished guests. Appreciate your time and your conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Good to see everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, wonderful to see everyone too.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.